Hello, everyone. Let's see if we're waiting for people to get started. Um, Thank you for being here. Welcome. I'm excited to have this discussion with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the trauma and guilt experienced by Afghans due to the recent crisis in Afghanistan. I welcome you all to join the conversation. I want to first set up some ground rules where we are going to be respectful of each other and avoid any personal attacks. Um, I know that everybody's emotions are running high right now, and we're all in a heightened state of emotion. But I still want to create this safe space for all of us to talk about the recent crisis in Afghanistan and the impact it's having on us mentally and emotionally. So I know that politics and religion is heavily involved here, but I want to stay away from that as much as possible and create a safe space for us to talk about our feelings. This conversation is going to hopefully be beneficial for all of us, whether we're recent immigrants or we are witnessing our own families going through this difficulty. I just want to create that space for us. So before we get started, I want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Nafisa Sekandari. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I specialize in anxiety-based disorders. You can learn some more here from me. But I'm also an Afghan that immigrated from Afghanistan when I was a young kid at the age of 9, over 40 years ago. And so I never thought I'd witness my own country going through this, my own people going through this again 40 years later. And so for that reason, this discussion has been necessary for me because I know so many people are having such a hard time. I know that I've been personally trying to process my own emotions and dealing with all the stuff that's going on. And I've been kind of concerned about this my whole life, I guess, because I dedicated my dissertation to this topic, the effects of war and migration on Afghan families, on Afghan children. And now 40 years later, I mean, when I did my dissertation, that was about the immigrants that immigrated here 40, like I said, 40 years ago, 1979 to almost 2000. And so that impacted the kids as far as their education and their learning, but it also impacted how the parents parented. And now we're experiencing this, we're witnessing the same thing happening to a new wave of immigrants trying to escape Afghanistan right now. So I wanted to have that discussion. If you're listening, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're watching us from. If you're interested in joining the conversation and coming on here, let me see if I can share a link. You guys feel free to use this link to come on live and have a discussion about what's going on. I know that there's a lot of guilt that's coming up for Afghans. There's a lot of, for the Afghans that are over abroad, like scattered around the world, from Europe to Australia to the United States, Canada. We're watching everything that's happening on TV. We're watching it all unfold. Even if we've never been in the country, even if we were born in the United States or overseas, it is still devastating for us to witness what's happening right now. And so I know for me, a lot of emotions are coming up, a lot of emotions that are related to past trauma, that are related to past just guilt, I guess, the survivor guilt. When I wrote my dissertation, I had to rely a lot on research done on the Jews surviving the Holocaust, the survivor guilt that they had. For generations, they had this code of silence where they never talked about anything because they had such a hard time feeling guilty, feeling or complaining about anything because of them surviving and so many people losing their lives. And so for Afghans, it was the same situation. When I did my dissertation, every Afghan family that I interviewed, not a single one would complain, saying, what do we have to complain about? We survived, and those family and friends that we left behind had to suffer. And so that's the conversation that we're hoping to have today. Today, I'm also joined by Faryal Popal. Welcome. Let me try and bring her in. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited for us to have this conversation. And let me just briefly show that Faryal is a mental health therapist. I'm going to give her an opportunity to go ahead and introduce herself in a minute, but she was also born in Afghanistan and left the country at a young age. So tell us a little bit about your experience and what's coming up for you, but tell us a little bit about your background and your mental health experience. I mean, I did in there, it said that you have a trauma background, you do have experience and trained as a trauma specialist. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we can talk about the trauma and the guilt and everything that's coming up for you and the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I was very young when we left Afghanistan. And I don't really recall anything. All I remember is we left the country and we came to a new country. It was a new environment. People were different. There were a lot of different experiences that were occurring here than it was back home. So I couldn't really tell. But growing up in here, mostly in the area, it felt like I was building my own identity. So growing up, it was all about kind of fitting in, adjusting into American life. And I kind of did that. I had my education, I had my bachelor's, my master's, kind of went through the normal scene of how we do things in this world, until when recently, I think 2 weeks ago, when I realized how much of my identity still ties with being an Afghan, how much of my identity still ties with being born in a land that we call Afghanistan, and that how much I truly love the country that I was born in. So it brought up a lot of feelings. It brought up the feelings of course, not necessarily experience PTSD, but having to live through my parents, I think it kind of brought that up for me. The anxiety was incredible. I'm just going to move my chair a little bit up. The survival guilt. I remember 2 weeks ago, we were at home and we heard that Mazar Sharif was taken over. And I remember my mom was over our house and I was like, wow, I can't believe it happened so fast. Like, I really expected more for us to defend or fight or whatever it was, right? I was hoping for the best outcome. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And then as soon as Kabul was taken over, I felt like I was literally kicked in the gut. I literally felt like my physiological response was, I just got kicked. I'm so physically in pain. So then I remember having to watch TV, and it almost felt like, and this is the PTSD I think that we've kind of been talking about, it almost felt like I was in my early teenage years, when 20 years ago when the Taliban had taken over, and that my parents or a lot of Afghan parents were experiencing the PTSD of them fleeing about like 30, 40 years ago and then being re-triggered. It almost felt like it was happening. It was present. Almost every Afghan is in danger. And my mind automatically went to that trauma amygdala space. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one. My entire family was feeling that way. A lot of Afghans were feeling that way. I remember even going to an Afghan store that day for something, and everybody just seemed like zombied out. They were processing things, they were trying to figure things out, and I was observing, but it was really hard. It hit home for me. So that's why PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is hugely impacted in our lives as Afghans. We live it day to day, right? The news that just came out yesterday, that was another blow. Boom, it happened. What is going on? So my experience has been similar to many other Afghans. I'm allowing myself to feel.
It's been really hard. I mean, for Americans, if anybody's watching that's not Afghan and they're Americans, they all can, if they were around and they were at an age that they can remember, they remember what happened that day on September 11th and how we all stood in shock and we couldn't even function for the whole day. And then so that's the experience it is for Afghans. Even if you've never been in Afghanistan, like my daughter was born here. She has no idea. She's wanted to go to Afghanistan. She's never been there. And she is angry every single day. And I think that's the message. I mean, that's the common thread that a lot of people that are experiencing their trauma as anger right now, because we feel so helpless. We had hope that for 20 years that there was stability, that women were getting an education, they were able to move about freely, they had opportunities, and now that might all be taken away. You and I have both had the privilege of getting an education, getting trained, having all this experience, having all these opportunities, and to know that that might not be available to women back home is just devastating. And it's just so difficult for me to even process that we are going right back to where we thought we were past it. And I do remember immigrating here. I do remember, I didn't know we were escaping at that time because we weren't allowed to be told as kids that we were leaving. But I remember waking up in a different country and going and realizing I'm never going back home. And I think for Afghans and a lot of refugees that are forced to leave their country, we're different than most immigrants in that a lot of us didn't necessarily want to be here. We always thought we were going to go back. I know for me, I waited for a long time to become a citizen and take my citizenship test and to get my passport. And the only reason I finally gave in at the age of 26 was I wanted to travel and I couldn't go anywhere with my Afghan passport. And I know that that was true for a lot of Afghans. They didn't want to give up that citizenship or that identity. And we had to for whatever reason. So those are all the feelings that I know people are looking at, all these people trying to get to America thinking, oh, they're thinking America is the land of opportunity. But a lot of them wanted to stay. They wanted to be there. They wanted to improve their country. And they aren't getting that opportunity. And they know that what's the point of staying here because my kids' lives are going to be in danger. We're going to be in danger. So hearing all of that and watching the news, I try not to watch the news, but I can't be sheltered from it because it's all over social media. It's all over everywhere, right? And I'm trying to stay on top of this. Are you working directly with people right now that you have personal experience of what's going on with them and what's coming up for them regarding mental health issues and trauma or guilt?
Not necessarily. I will be starting my volunteering hours at an organization in the Bay Area that will be accepting thousands and thousands of Afghans. So I've offered my support in terms of mental health, whatever it may be, unboxing, whatever it is, right? That's my way to cope with it. But what I'm actually sensing it is from the individuals that are around me and the individuals that I'm hearing and the individuals that you see on Facebook, the young generation. So I'm not closely working with anyone specifically, but I am hearing, seeing, and feeling. And that's where I get the idea of this mental health issue that we're experiencing right now in this human crisis. So it's quite difficult, right? You brought up a really good point about the young generation, your daughter. Everything that I see on TikTok or Instagram and Facebook, and most of these kids were not born in Afghanistan like you and I. They don't even have any memory. They have probably never even visited, but the identity does go back, and they are so angry. They are so irritated with how things have turned out. I think a betrayal is a good word they've indicated to me when I've checked in with one person. So these feelings are coming about for every Afghan, I think, regardless of where you live. But for us to be able to have a better life and then to see all those images, it's hugely feelings of guilt, right? We made it, and they're trying to make it.
Right. And I know people that are in Afghanistan right now that have moved back hoping to contribute, hoping to contribute to making the country better, hoping to contribute to making the country move forward. And now they're stuck and they're desperate trying to come back home. Home being here now, the United States, because this is all they've known, but they thought, okay, I'm going to go and help my country, thinking that there was going to be some stability and opportunity. And now they're stuck and they're like, I need to leave now. And they're unable to. I know there are several people that are at the airport right now. They're not able to leave. The stories from the airport alone are devastating and heartbreaking. The bombing recently that happened is heartbreaking. So if there's anybody that's watching, that's listening, if you, like I said, want to join us and join the conversation, please click on that link in the comment section. And then you don't have to share your name. You don't have to even be on camera. We can just block your name and you can turn your camera off, but we would love to hear from you and what you're experiencing if you want to join us, because I do want to create the space for us to to just talk about our feelings and come together collectively, and hopefully come together as far as what can we do. You're doing exactly, I think, what we need to do, or we're compelled to do, and that's to take action, right? That's to go and do something, volunteer, donate, educate. I mean, I have a cousin that she's really young. She's a young, passionate entrepreneur, and she started a little business. She's trying to fundraise with her little business and give her stuff away, hoping to make a difference. She's never been to Afghanistan, but she is connected to her family, her parents that emigrated, and she knows their story and knows what they've gone through. As much as, I do have some trauma, I guess, or some guilt that's coming up. I was one of the lucky ones when we left. I mean, we experienced things. I remember going to school and hearing about dead bodies all over the street on the way to school. And we were caught in a bombing one night and had to sleep in a ditch. So I've experienced some of that. I experienced like all the flyers that were being tossed from the helicopters. But at the same time, I didn't experience the horrible living conditions that some people have had to go through living in refugee camps for many, many years. We were lucky that we had family in Pakistan and we could go and stay with them until we were accepted into coming to America. A lot of people didn't have that. So even though my experience was so mild, it stayed with me all these years later, and it's continued to affect me. And like you said, shaped my identity. There are people that weren't so lucky, and they're probably being re-traumatized, re-triggered right now. What's your experience as far as your own history with your family and family members that their story, that could kind of like be similar to what people are going through right now?
I think helplessness.
Yes.
Right? We really can't do a lot from here. Everything from what I've known has been closed. I don't personally have a lot of close family members in Afghanistan right now, but I feel it for the others that have been, excuse me, calling. What I have been hearing is that there's desperate pleas. You live in America. How can you help me? What can you do for me? And that is quite difficult to hear, right? Because our hands are very much tied. We really cannot do anything. And then in regards to trauma, excuse me, for the person that is getting that phone call, how do they feel, right? That must be one really difficult feeling to process. And you may not even be able to process because you're getting constantly these calls of what can you do for me? Help me out. And I was watching TV last night, CNN, and one of the veterans was actually helping bring in all these Afghans from Afghanistan. And he said his inbox is full. His inbox is full. So the feeling that I'm sensing is, of course, the guilt that we've already covered, but it's the helplessness. I can't do anything. Therefore, I'm going to be in this mud, in this trauma with you. And I'm sure every Afghan that has been dealing with that is not really coherently present. Like, we're going in daily, we're working, we're going to school, but it is literally in the back of our minds and we're thinking about it. So that's been mostly my understanding of how it's been. And that's been quite difficult to grasp because these are human beings, right? With children, with families, they're desperate. They know their life might be at danger at some point. And they've already lived through the trauma 20 years ago. So they know exactly the consequences that will be for them if they continue to stay. And they're willing to make the risk of going to the airport, knowingly that their lives will be in danger.
Well, just the people that sat on the plane. I mean, those people are not ignorant fools, not knowing that they're going to fall to their death. But that desperation that I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
We're feeling helpless here because a lot of people think, well, you're in America, you can do something. There's nothing we can do. But those people that are like, even the reporters talking about how everybody's coming to us with their papers saying, please do something.
Yeah.
Get us through. And they're like, we can't do anything. The military, I'm sure, is feeling overwhelmed as well. All the vets that, I do have patients that have served in Afghanistan and have have major PTSD because they formed bonds with the Afghan people. I remember going to Afghanistan in 2003 and running into the military at one of the stores and asking, what do you guys think of being here? Are you feeling safe? Like, I felt concerned for them. And they're like, we feel safer here than we do in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
And so they were feeling safe at that time. And then it just kept escalating. And then a lot of them, like this one guy, he's like, I had connections with the people, with the translators, and then for me to hear that they got shot because they worked with us, that was traumatizing for him. And he had such a hard time dealing with everything that he went through. So it's affecting a lot more than just the Afghan people. I know there's a lot of vets right now that are going, what was it all for? We went there hoping to rebuild a country and create stability, and now it's back to where it was. What was it all for? And it's also devastating.
And that's why mental health is so immensely important right now, for us to focus on that, to talk about it, to normalize it, and then to validate it, right? Because it's not just impacting Afghans, it's impacting refugees that may have been had to flee a similar way, vets, and also the feminist group, I believe. A lot of women groups. They are really helpless. I mean, you see these comments, you see how they're feeling. It's been impacting a lot of people. And this current event that is occurring, and who knows what will happen, it's going to be a continued trigger for us. So it's really essentially very important for us to talk about that mental health piece, and especially in our community, to normalize the mental health, the mental health piece.
There's a huge taboo and stigma around mental health. And when you're in a state of crisis, it's like, you want me to talk about my feeling when I'm in survival mode?
Yeah.
Obviously, no. If you're in survival mode, we want to support you in any way we can and get you out of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, focusing on what do you have control over right now? What do you have control? Because there's a lot outside of us that we have no control over. What do you have control over right now? Because when it comes to trauma, they say our interpretation of the event leads to PTSD more than the actual event.
Yeah.
Like somebody that's never that's been completely sheltered and is always expected safety and security, for that to be removed can easily create PTSD, right? And so for a lot of people, I think it's a matter of like trying to, like I said, focus on what do you have control over? What can you do right now? If you're in Afghanistan, obviously you need to make sure that you're staying safe.
Yeah.
You're doing what's good for you and your family for now, and try and stay as safe as possible. But at the same time, we can focus on bringing ourselves back in our body, taking a deep breath. Prayer definitely helps. Praying to God. All of us are praying for the people in Afghanistan because we're so helpless, because we have nothing else besides prayer, right?
Yeah.
So what are some, given that you do have a background in trauma, what are some suggestions that you can have for people that are either watching, witnessing all of this unfold on the news and the media, social media, or even the people that are back home in Afghanistan?
I think in terms of therapy and in terms of specific strategies in regards to trauma, I think when it comes to Afghans and Asians, I am a huge believer of modifications, right? Because we make most of our decisions, or Afghans back home or wherever, we make decisions based on our cultural beliefs and based on our religion, in addition to some sort of psychological education that we may have. But I think if there are any therapists here that are listening to the refugees that might be coming on board and that you may be helping, I think the biggest thing that I am willing to do and I would want people to practice is reflective listening. Listen to their stories. Listen to what they have to tell you. Listen to how they've survived, and just be there for them. I think that's the biggest thing that they would need. Solution-wise, we can kind of go into, there's a home, there's social, we can do the social work piece, right? Provide them the stability and the food and all that stuff. But it is really important that we kind of process and allow their brain to kind of stay present and process what actually just occurred. if we let them stay in this phase of just avoidance and I just need to kind of go and get to my home and get to the kids and I need help and this and that, then yes, we can provide that. But I think it's essential for us as human beings to hear what they went through first. But I think if you are a person that is going through that, to be present, to be patient, and to allow yourself to have lots of self-love, have your support system, talk to people. That's one good thing about us Afghans is that we do talk to a lot of people, right? One thing happens, we call this person, we call that person, and I actually can't speak for Afghanistan because I've never really lived through it there, but I'm pretty sure it's similar around there as well, where if something happens to you, you call around. So if you are in that agony, if you are feeling really, really, really just deep in that mud of trauma, of helplessness, talk to someone. Tell them how you feel. Call someone and say, how are you feeling today? I know that that brings a lot of comfort. I know that that brings a lot of understanding that I hear you, I validate you, I know that it's tough. We'll get through this together. I think that's the biggest thing that I think we need to focus on and to work on, is to listen to them. We can do everything else step by step in terms of as a trauma therapist or a CBT, EMDR, and all that stuff. But because they're in this shocked phase, that we need to just allow their brain to kind of marinate and kind of process and to be able to verbalize the struggles they went through. And then that's when we start the trauma therapy. That's when we start the counseling services or the mental health services.
I mean, we need to focus on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Safety, security, food, basic necessities are super important right now. Just making sure that for a lot of people that's well taken care of, and focusing on that and making sure that you're getting your basic necessities met. And then later on, you just move on up the ladder of the hierarchy of needs. And once we're stable and we have our basic needs met, we can focus on having security and safety. Then we can focus on processing our trauma. But one lesson when I was doing my research for my dissertation is Elie Wiesel, I believe, is the one that during the Holocaust, while he's in the concentration camps, what he did to help himself deal with the trauma of going through that horrible experience of watching your family members go to gas chambers. What he did is he separated himself, and that he made himself the observer of what's happening instead of being actually in it. And he started writing everything down as if, I'm going to share this with, because he was a professor. I'm going to share this with my students when I get out. I'm going to talk about this to my family when I get out. I'm going to write about this in a book when I get out. Journaling is super, super important. If you have no one to talk about right now, just even typing stuff on your phone, creating a video blog of what's happening, talk about your feelings, talk about the trauma. It's like Anne Frank in her diary. Start writing all of this down as much as possible. If you are somebody that's currently in Afghanistan, in the process, in the thick of it, witnessing everything in the airport, document everything, write everything down. That story is going to be very powerful when you make it to the other side and you're able to share it. But at the same time, it creates that emotional distance for yourself, so you're not internalizing all of it. So at this point, I do like for anybody that's listening, you can either comment, ask questions, or go into that link and come join us and have this conversation with us. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to start talking to you. Like I said, you can remain completely anonymous. You don't have to share anything, but if you have anything that you want to say on camera, just please use that link, or you can comment and ask questions by using the comment in the chat section of this stream. So what else is are you observing or noticing?
I do want to kind of go back to what you just indicated. He was writing those things for his future, right? That is instilling hope.
Right.
He was literally instilling hope in himself that he will get out and he will thrive and he will survive, right? Sometimes it feels like we're in it and we're stuck. We can't get out. So instilling whatever hope that is, whatever you can remind yourself, write a book, like you said, write it, whatever it is that you can remind yourself and remind your brain that what you're experiencing right now, excuse me, that may not last forever. That may be better tomorrow. That you may get to a safer country. And I think for us Afghans here that are feeling guilty and helpless, it's important for us to also remember is how can we recall and remember, how can we instill that support, instill that hope, and how can we remind ourselves that there might be a better day in the future.
Right. And a lot of times, like I said, we don't have a lot of control in our lives. Honestly, I mean, we really don't have any control in our lives anyway, except for this breath that we're taking, right? Sometimes just getting back in our body, taking a deep breath and focusing on, okay, I'm breathing right now. Let me focus on what I can do. If I have nothing else, let me just start writing what I'm feeling right now, just so that I can have a documentation of this experience. Wherever that ends up taking you, you don't know, but that hope is the most important piece to have for survival, for moving forward in your life. Without hope, we have nothing. So writing it and saying, one day I'm going to share this with the world. One day I'm going to tell this to my grandchildren. One day I'm going to share this with my family members. That's a good way to start writing, whether in a notebook, on your phone, making a video of everything that's happening and then putting it all together later. You are focusing on that hope, right?
On that hope, yeah. On a positive note, I've actually been seeing a lot of that.
Really?
I've been seeing a lot of that. I've been seeing some newer generation where they're talking about, we will see you again. We will come back to Afghanistan. It is our land. It is our way of living, and we'll be back. And these are the photographers, the fashion photographer, 2 specific females that left, I think, America or France or whatever it was. They had to flee all over again after finding their identity in Afghanistan. So they are instilling that hope in people that I will go back again, that I will see you again. And that is profound. That is helpful for the readers, and that's helpful for that person that's expressing it.
And I'm seeing a lot of people that have recently gone to Afghanistan, like Drew Binsky. He's a traveler that goes around the world, and he just did a piece, I think, a couple of months ago about his time in Afghanistan and how much he loves the people and the community. I mean, I know a lot of people that aren't familiar with Afghanistan. They're probably like, it's just a hole in the wall with just nothing but destruction. But it is a country that has been drawing and attracting people, not just for all of its wealth, the minerals, the resources, but for the kindness of the people, for the generosity, for the hospitality, not to mention the delicious food and all the like beautiful jewelry. Just the culture is very attractive to a lot of foreigners. And I think Rick Steves, he also has a show on PBS about traveling. He went to Afghanistan in 1978. And he's been posting his journal and experience of when he was there. And a lot of people are affected by this because it's not a hole in the wall. There are people with dreams and hopes in that country. There are people that want safety and security for that country. They want stability for that country. And this sense of betrayal we have right now, it's anger producing because we had hope.
Yeah.
I hope that hope still remains.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel good to see some women standing up, or even when it was the Independence Day, the flag continued to be raised. Those are really touching moments.
Yeah. And I think specifically for me, what really impacted me the most was the loss of freedom for work, right? That kind of hit hard for me. That triggered me more than anything else, because I did see your progress. I did see semi-equal rights. I did see that women were progressing and they were doing things that they really enjoyed, like going to school, being a news anchor, right? Being a singer. And then we have the 10 robotics girls team that created ventilators out of just recycled stuff.
Right, right. I mean, when given the opportunity, we can stand up and make the country better. But when there's so many hands, and as much as I said, I don't really want to get into the politics or whatever, but at the same time, the reality is there's so many hands inside Afghanistan manipulating the situation that maybe that's one of the reasons so many people are leaving. Going, this is not going to end well right now. I mean, we waited for 40 years hoping that one day this country is going to be going in the right direction, and people are going to live with peace and stability.
Yeah.
And it might take another 40 years for us to get back to normal.
And that is so hard to hear, right? And that is really difficult to hear because we are Afghans of that land, right? I could only imagine how it makes our parents, our grandparents feel, because they've lived through it, they've seen the beauty of it, they've had the freedom of it, and now it's all been taken away, literally. And then there's Afghans that are, that are need to get out for their safety.
I remember one time I was at an Afghan New Year picnic with my grandmother. This was way before 9/11. We were at a picnic and she was looking around. She goes, I don't know any of these people. I'm used to being around people that I recognize. Because Afghans in this country, we're from all over Afghanistan. We're from different communities. And so when you're in Afghanistan, you kind of live within your group and you know people and everybody knows you and there's a sense of connection. And I know a lot of Afghans that would rather give up their safety and security in America and go live in Afghanistan because of that sense of community.
Yeah.
And I just felt so sad for her that she was looking around going, I know none of these people. Nobody knows me. I don't know anybody. And that was so hard for her. That was just devastating.
So that's how we do better as collectively as a society, right? So in terms of feeling hopeless, helpless, triggered, traumatic experiences, nightmares, you're not able to sleep, you're not able to eat. So in our culture, it is important for us to collectively be with a group that can support us, that can talk to us, that can kind of help us process what we're going through. And that's what we do really well with in terms of coping. Just like how your grandmother, she wished she was around Afghans. And I think that's one of the things that we should be able to do. That's an easy thing that it's in our control in terms of coping skills. We talk to our people, we talk to the people that you feel comfortable with, and you tell them how you feel.
You know, as Afghanistan has over 70 different languages that are spoken there. We have so many different tribes and ethnicities. And the sad thing is, as beautiful as that is, which I love that it's so diverse, that there is no one look for Afghans, right? Like,
we all look different.
We all look different. And so I love that about Afghanistan. But the sad thing is we can't get past our own ethnicities to reach out and say we're all Afghans. And there isn't that connection and that cohesion within our groups. And I don't know how that's possible for us, but I think we all need to start working towards that as let's be united as Afghans instead of you're this group and I'm this group. That shouldn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
We're all scattered around the world and we need to come together and just recognize the connection, the commonality between us, that I don't care what tribe you're from, you're my fellow Afghan and I want us to work together to build our country or contribute somehow.
Do you get a sense that after this crisis that is actually occurring, is it bringing us together? Do you get a sense of that?
This situation right now?
Yeah.
No, even then I feel like it's split because a lot of people are taking one side or the other, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand the taking one side over the other when we're witnessing these people suffering and just desperate to leave. How are we going to be in favor of them staying in a place that all their rights will be taken away, all their opportunities will be taken away? So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to create a
political dialogue here.
Race war either, not a tribal war. But all I'm seeing is the mental health aspect of it, the devastation of it. And it's like, as a human being, we need to look at that and say, why? If this is supposed to be so good for Afghanistan, why are so many leaving? And just psychologically, what's happening to them? That terror, that fear that's in those people, what is going on? And so let me see, we have a comment here. So we have this comment. I have friends who fought and died in Afghanistan or PTSD, and has brought up a lot of triggers for them as well. As a woman and a mother, my heart aches for the younger generation and all the women. I feel hopeless. I feel angry, sad, and want nothing more than for those in Afghanistan to be able to live. Um, the rest didn't come up. Yeah, to live a full life. Thank you, Megan, for that comment. I really appreciate that. And those are the feelings that you're not even Afghan and you're feeling all that. And us as Afghans are also really having a difficult time moving past it all. So,
and that's exactly what we want, right? We want them to live a full life. We want them to have all of their basic rights and needs, and for women, especially for women, to be able to do what they really want to do in their lives. And that is, I think, the heartbreak for a lot of women. And I know Megan's a woman herself, so I think that is also probably one of the trigger points, as I felt, when all of this is unfolding currently.
Well, especially since you and I have had that opportunity. I mean, I am so grateful for my parents for the sacrifice that they made. We left everything behind. We left a comfortable life with support, with help, and we came here. We had nothing. We had to be dependent on the government for a while to support us until my parents ended up and then they worked really hard to get off all government assistance, to get off all support. And the jobs whatever jobs that they took, I mean, I have family members that were doctors back in Afghanistan and they couldn't even work here. And so whatever they ended up doing, they gave us that opportunity to have a comfortable life in this country, to be able for us to get an education, to go out there and make a difference and get our degrees and fulfill our potential. And so, of course, it's devastating that we had that opportunity and now we know women aren't going to have that opportunity. And it's devastating. And I read this one thing, and again, without getting into religion or whether the Taliban are good, I just want to take out the thing about extreme Muslims. Somebody made a really good point about extreme Muslims are people like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He was the ultimate Muslim. He's the one that guided us on how to be Muslims. That's what the standard we need to say when we say extreme Muslims. He gave women rights. He educated women. Women were in power. Women had government positions. Women fought side by side with the military. Women ran businesses. Women were able to inherit property. Women had the right to vote 1,400 years ago when other countries didn't get that opportunity. That's the kind of extremism in Islam that I want to see. When he conquered Mecca, not a single person felt the need to leave, nor was there any bloodshed. That's what I think of extremism. Like, that's the ultimate level of being a Muslim. Not abusing women, not depriving them of rights, not hitting them and stoning them, killing them for whatever reason. And so I wanted to just kind of take that word back as far as extremism, because under all these countries that were under Muslim rule during the golden age of Islam, like the Jews and the Christians were unharmed. They wanted that protection. It was the golden time in Spain. And so I want us to remember our history as Muslims as well, and that this isn't what we're seeing right now isn't Islam. Because under an Islamic, if it was Islam, people would not want to run away and leave. And so I just wanted to touch on that as far as what extremism is, because we're always associating extremism as these people like ISIS and these fundamentalists. That's what the true Islam is. That is not our definition of Islam.
Yeah, and I think I'm getting a sense of that people are differentiating that. I remember in 8th grade when 9/11 happened, I was very much collectively put into that little category of you are like them, like the Taliban. But I am getting a huge sense of now that people are understanding that there are different variety of Muslims, and what they are is not what we are. And I think that is mentally kind of relieving, because imagine if we would have to go through explaining our religion on top of processing what we're going through. That would be a lot for us to deal with. So, and the hope is that people are seeing, we're sensing that people are accepting the Afghans and the Muslims, and hopefully there aren't going to be a lot of ill intentions or ill comments towards Muslims, but I agree with you. Medina was the most diversified city in that moment. And I mean, he married a woman older than him, a businesswoman, and everyone had freedom of religion.
Right.
So everyone was welcome in Medina.
So even my daughter just keeps hearing Sharia law. Why does that have to be Sharia law? I'm like, if you really understood Sharia law, it's not what you think it is. It's just like, it's like the Constitution. It's like any other rules set for a country to operate, for a people to operate under. But what we're hearing is the demonization of Sharia law because of how people are practicing it. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on that as well, because a lot of people are just assuming that going back 500 years is considered, that's how Muslims are, that's how Islam is. I wouldn't have the freedoms, I wouldn't be so proud of my religion if that's the kind of religion that I practiced. I wouldn't have had the opportunities if that's the kind of religion my family practiced. And we consider ourselves pretty religious Muslims, but at the same time, that's what a lot of people don't actually understand because of what they're seeing on the news. And I don't blame them, because there's a lot of false information out there, but I just wanted to kind of touch on that.
How do you feel about that when you hear things like that?
What do you mean?
When you hear things that are not true about what you practice. How does that make you feel?
Well, we've been kind of experiencing that since 9/11, right? Yeah. I mean, we're constantly defending it and constantly having to say, that's not us, that's not Islam. Dalia Magahed, she actually is very well spoken and has a huge Facebook following, wrote a piece about this after 9/11 about does everything that's happening, does everything the Taliban stand for in accordance with the Sharia law. And that was a really good discussion, and we're constantly defending ourselves. That's not us, that's not who we are. And why are you associating one terrorist act to all Muslims where a non-Muslim can do the same kind of act and the whole religion isn't condemned, right? And so this is what's so difficult about constantly having to defend ourselves. It's like one person goes and does something wrong and all of us are maligned for it, where a non-Muslim can commit the same act and they're like, oh, well, he was a lone wolf. He acted by himself. There's no terrorist connection to what he did. But one person and again, they say that these people are not mentally stable. You cannot be a mentally well person and decide to go and blow up people, right? So when it's a non-Muslim that does that, they're like, oh, well, he has mental health issues. But supposedly somebody that's Muslim in name only commits such atrocities. It's like, oh, well, this is just the way they are. This is how they think. This is how they operate. And that's really difficult, because I think in this time we are forced to kind of defend Islam. Every single time something happens, we're forced to defend Islam.
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with where you live too, right? I'm in California, so there hasn't, and I've been in my bubble, which is really surrounded by a lot of diverse communities. So I haven't really had to experience that, but I have seen it, and I've tried to comment back in terms of Facebook and kind of explain where I stand and how I feel about their comment towards my religion, but it is very difficult, as you just said. And that's another trigger point that we're dealing with, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm hoping that if the people do want to still comment and come and join us, I'd be happy to have you guys come join us. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer your questions. But if not, we can wrap this up. And I'm glad you were able to come join us and be a part of this discussion. Thank you for suggesting it. And I hope that if anybody knows, if you can share credible sources of where we can help, or if you, Faryal, know anybody that were good, credible sources of where we can donate, we can support, we can fundraise, please let me know. Gabe said, thank you for sharing all this information. Thank you so much for being here and sharing that comment with us. So if you know of anybody, just either tell us now, or we can post it in the comments.
I think currently the banks are closed, so anything that we send out is probably, unless it's a big organization, I don't know how they would be sending the funds. But I think there's a lot of refugees are coming to America, Europe, Australia, Canada. I think we should also focus on what we can do to help them here. And I've myself have connected with an agency in the Bay Area, but there's a lot of students and families that are coming in Sacramento County, in Fremont school districts. So we need to look into how we can support them. There's a lot of options, and I can email that to you. There's agencies specifically asking for specific donations for the children and women. And they have a wish list, so we can click and we can order through Amazon and support that agency. And or if you're Afghan and if you are feeling that guilt, like some of us are, donate some time and help these people and be there for them. I know Virginia, I heard this from my mom, where Afghans were cooking food, homemade food, and they were delivering as they were arriving, which is something they probably miss so much. So little things like that, I think, would be really beneficial. But as soon as we hear the banks opening up or agencies that can go in and support all these other individuals, then I'll be helpful. I do want to plug in a family in Germany, which is they collectively, as a family, they came in together. They have an organization called Help.Afghanistan. This is solely in Germany, but you can support them. They have families in Afghanistan that they're sending money over, and they go into tents and help families over. So they're on Instagram and on Facebook. And I know that specifically is a family contributing and sending money to Afghanistan. So we can do things like that where we can feel more hopeful and helpful.
I know Islamic Relief is somebody that I've been supporting for many years. And so you can send it to them, because they do have people that can actually go on the ground and actually serve people directly. I wouldn't necessarily send money through the banks right now, because like you said, they are closed. You don't know where that money is going to go. But the Afghans that are for your own local communities, know that these people are going to need translators. I know that a lot of Afghans speak English right now, but a lot of them they're going to need translators. They're going to need people that are going to speak the same language as them, that can understand their plight, they can understand their situation. So reach out and trying to help out in any way. Find out from social workers in your community. So I'm at Dr. Sekandari at yahoo.com. I'm at drsekandari.com. And then Faryal, do you have a website that people can contact you? Because Gabe was wondering.
Yeah, I don't, but it's faryalpopal@gmail.com.
Okay, so that would just be your name at gmail.com. And I'm at drsekandari.com if you guys need to reach me. You can also contact me via Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well, Dr. Sekandari, clinical psychologist. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Nafisa Sekandari. So feel free to reach out to me there as well. And if we find any information, like if you follow me on Instagram, I will share information and keep posting whatever I have. Let's see. Yeah, I know. It's okay, Layla. Thank you for being here and joining us whenever you can. We will have the replay available so you guys can watch, and please share with other people. Put in the comments if you have resources that people can contribute or support. If you have any additional information, let's just keep the conversation going in the comments. So thank you for everybody for being here. Any last words?
I think the biggest thing for me as an Afghan American, and for kind of to be able to spread this understanding that it is okay if you're not okay. It is okay if you're feeling angry. I want to validate your feelings. I want you to know that what you're experiencing is very, very natural humanistic response, and that we will get through this and we will do better again.
And I do believe in the power of prayer, all of us praying together for the same positive outcome. Inshallah, God will hear those prayers and answer our prayers. But we talked about journaling for the Afghans that are stuck in the airport or trying to leave or stuck in Afghanistan. That journaling helps us as well. That's a great place for us to process our feelings, process our rage, process our anger, and that'll help us get clear-headed so we're not only functioning on emotion. We need to have a clear head when we're making these decisions. And so
coherent decisions, I think, right? Because we want to be able to make the right decision. And when we have a lot of emotions, and sometimes our headspace is filled with that. So journaling is incredibly helpful.
But so is self-care. A lot of people are up all night doom scrolling and going through Instagram and social media and watching the news. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not taking care of yourself and eating the right foods and exercising and journaling, you're going to get so emotionally overwhelmed. You're not going to be good for anybody. So in order for us to stay as strong mentally and emotionally as possible, we do need to take care of ourselves. Yeah. So that we can be there when people need us, when our people need us, when other people that are struggling need us. So self-care, it's not selfish. It really is necessary for us to be able to help other people.
I agree. And I think what you brought up a really good point early on too is to minimize the news, the social media, if it impacts you to the point that it triggers and it causes you past trauma responses. So if you are feeling really helpless, hopeless, and you are in a way very irritated and you have to live your life, we have to work, we have to go to school, it is incredibly important to minimize some of that news if you can, so that you can live day to day and do your activities.
Well, the thing is, as long as things are always going to happen outside of us, right? There's always going to be something negative that's happening outside of us. In order for us to be able to respond appropriately, we need to be pretty solid and stable on the inside. And if we're a nervous wreck and a ball of rage and fury, we're not going to make good decisions for ourselves, for our family, for our people, for our country. And so it's really important for us to take care of ourselves and make sure that we're in a good place mentally to be able to make good leadership decisions. Take control, make good decisions, go out there, help the community, volunteer if you can. And so those are the things that we have control over.
Correct.
Volunteer, just donate to charitable organizations that are reputable. There are a lot of scammy places out there right now. I just want to make sure that you guys are all aware and not just send your money everywhere because you're emotional right now. Figure out who they are, figure out what their track record is, figure out what they're going to do. If they're only going to take your money and just only send it to their family members, that's not going to be necessarily good. So you want to make sure, I guess if that's okay with you, but you want to make sure that this money is going to a good place and it's actually helping people and not necessarily an opportunity for people to scam, because unfortunately that is also happening.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing a lot of Afghans here, and we'll be seeing a lot of children attending schools. So we want to make sure that, we emphasize on that, and that is the best help that you can provide to be there for them then.
Well, one of the reasons I even wrote my dissertation is when I was working in the schools, I noticed a lot of Afghans, the kids were dropping out of schools. The parents were not mentally or emotionally able to help these kids. They were not being able to parent them effectively. And so supporting the parents, educating them about the educational system here, and then encouraging the kids to take advantage of this opportunity and actually go to school. Like when we came here, we were the first to be here. We didn't have any role models. We had no choice but to keep going. Education was highly emphasized even before in Afghanistan. And then when we came here, we just continued to go. And then as it turned out, we were role models for all of my cousins and relatives that were following behind us. And I am so impressed by all the accomplishments that my cousins and relatives have achieved over the years, because they just kept going and taking advantage of the opportunities presented to them. And so I would hope that we can be those role models for all of these new Afghans coming to this country, just wanting to start a better life.
Yeah, Afghans are resilient, and so are the children. I think with just a little bit of a self-support and love, they will be fine. It's just for us to be able to kind of extend our support, making sure that they're okay. And the piece about the children, it is incredibly important for us to understand that they are coming and they've had to live through what they had to live through and then expected to attend school. So a lot of empathy needs to be played, and a lot of acceptance, a lot of validation, and just meeting them where they're at is very important at school settings.
It just made me think of us starting school and me not speaking a word of English, because none of us spoke any English at that time. And I remember my teacher asking me, did you drive here? Did you walk here? And I just couldn't, it took me a while to understand, what are you talking about? And how difficult that was. And the fact that I was put in a class that I literally skipped an entire class, that I jumped from like fourth grade. I didn't even do fourth grade. Fifth grade, if you really think about it, that was only half a semester.
Yeah.
And I didn't speak English that entire semester. And so you can't even count fifth grade. So that is going to, that affected my education. So there was some learning that happened fourth and fifth grade that I never had that foundation. And when you're learning another language, when you're becoming fluent in another language, there is going to be some gaps in your learning. And for teachers and school employees to be compassionate and to be understanding about that. I mean, I was really angry when my school counselor in high school, because that was like about 5 years after we moved here, he literally basically told me, well, because of your accent and whatever, don't even bother going to college. You're probably just going to get a nice little job somewhere or get married and forget about going to college. And that angered me so much that I was like, watch me, and that's why I kept going and kept getting all the way until I got my doctorate, because it was just the bar was so low. The expectation was so low because I had an accent and because I didn't speak English fluently. So please don't do that with the kids that are coming in. Give them, just because they don't speak the language does not mean they're not intelligent, does not mean that they're not capable of achieving greatness. So keep that in mind when you're working with these refugees coming in and the new kids that are coming into the schools.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was rude, Layla. Thank you. I was just like, and it's funny because later on he got arrested for inappropriate behavior with kids. So karma got him.
So, I mean, those things happen. Those things happen. And that's why we want to make sure that adults are being better role models for these children. Adults, I understand, like, they have to do what they have to do to be able to live. I mean, we had to do, our parents had to do it. But for the children, it's a very different world. And mentally, you're kind of in this new world. You have these people that look so different. You don't speak the language. So that support that needs to go out there for the children is so incredibly crucial here.
Totally. Yes. Thank you, Gabe, for not wanting to be a staff member like that. I share that because I don't want anybody else to treat anybody else that way. But as far as recommendations for translation services, there are people. I know that when I worked in the Fremont School District, we had translators that were signed up from the district. But you can contact the school district to see what services they have. I know that there were some districts way back when I was working as a school psychologist that they were actually have translation services for different languages. I don't know how it is right now. Do you know anybody, Faryal?
They do have, each district, they have their own language translation services, but there might be some private agencies that may provide that. We can look through it and we can send it out or comment it or message it out. Okay. Because there are some private agencies that do that. We do speak Dari, not Farsi. So when we are getting a translation services, we want to make sure we're asking for Dari speaker, not Farsi speaker. And Farsi is for Iranian, so it's a different dialect. But I can definitely look through it. The districts should have their own system, and they should mostly have Dari speakers.
And the difference between Dari and Farsi is it's like British English and regular American English, right? And so that's the difference. And sometimes British people speak and we're like, we don't understand a word they're saying because of how they're speaking. And there's a lot of different. So with Iranian Farsi, there's a lot of other different languages mixed in. It's very difficult for Afghan speakers to understand what they're saying. And so that is a difficult. Thank you for that distinction. I'm going to step out for 1 second because my computer battery is going down, but I do have a guest that wants to join in and talk to us. So I want to make sure that my battery's charged for that. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Whoops, I was supposed to take myself out.
I do have to say is that if your district does not have a translation system that specifically you can ask for a Dari speaker, that is your perfect opportunity to advocate for one. because if you do have an influx of students that speak Dari, it might be beneficial to be able to have that added language as a so that you can use quite frequently, because it's going to be essential. You would be needing to speak with parents just to kind of get the background how that child is doing. So if they don't have that, that's the perfect opportunity to advocate for one and say, hey, I think it's time for us to get a Dari speaking translator. But I did write it down here, and I will see if I can find some sort of an agency, private agency, and I'll share it with Dr. Sekandari.
And if you have professionals that are working there, like I know as a school psychologist, I would be called to other IEP meetings or to other meetings to translate as well. So we're all willing to do our part right now because we know that's not something that's easily available. So we will keep you posted, Gabe. And if anything comes up, you can contact us and we can share that information. So let me see if my guest is ready to join the stream. Mobeen, are you there?
Hello, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, of course. How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
So Mobeen is here because he recently came back from Afghanistan and they had an amazing trip. For how long were you guys there for?
About 5 weeks, I think.
Oh, wow. And this was the first time you went?
Yeah, I was there most of June to like the first or second week of July.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and then you came at a really good time, and that, I mean, it must be devastating for you to see what's going on when you went there. And I remember seeing some of the pictures and everything, and now it's a completely different world. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, especially seeing all the before and after, videos and pictures. I see like a lot of familiar places, especially when I was at the airport. I recognize a lot of places that I was there, so I could like really think of the before and after. Or when you see that big flag on top of them, it's called Wazir Akbar. It's a big flag. You see how they pulled it down, and it's just crazy to think that it's a whole another regime now that is taking over Afghanistan. Yeah.
What was it like when you were there? Tell us the experience of first. One thing that happened to me, it's like I left when I was really young. And then when we went in 2003, what happened to me was really shocking in that as soon as the plane entered into the Kabul airport space, I just started crying. I was bawling like a baby. I didn't know why. And I didn't even grow up in Kabul. We grew up in Herat the whole time. So, I mean, we would go over there and visit my family, and that emotional reaction was something that was so uncontrollable. What was it like for you having been born here and then going back with your family to Afghanistan?
I thought it was actually really cool. At first, I had like different expectations. I was probably thinking more. It's like I feel like more like ruined in a way, more like I guess third world country, you would say. But when I went, it's kind of like like when I tell other people, oh, I went to Afghanistan, they would be like, oh wow, that's crazy. You went to like a whole war zone, it's like like when you tell someone like, oh, I went here for a vacation, they're like, that's like the most unusual spot they would expect. But when I went there, it was actually a lot better than I thought. Like they had I could like guess like I would compare it kind of like to Turkey because I've been to Turkey too. They had like really nice restaurants there. I would say they had better restaurants than here. Like really really fancy restaurants, really good food. I would think the food there was honestly better than anywhere else I've had food because like I guess just the organic taste, the fresh taste you had there, it just tasted different than like going to other countries. Also, yeah, just in general, like it was like very lively. You had like people everywhere. There was cars. Everyone's there was. It was just like it was. I feel like it was a lot nicer than I expected, and like yeah, I guess media portrays it in a different way. Shows all the bad sides. So yeah.
Layla's love Layla is saying the naan was probably amazing, and our naan is amazing.
It was. I had so much naan and brinj and everything. So for like 5 weeks straight, I just had Afghan food.
Oh gosh, the amount of fruits and vegetables, those pomegranates everywhere, just
a lot of
amazing.
interest, like a lot of everything there is really. I think one of the most things I liked the most was the ice cream there. Like gelato, but even though it was like Afghani ice cream, there's also like they have like pizza there. I feel like the pizza there was better than the pizza I've had in America and like Europe and everything. The pizza over there was also very good. The ice cream had gelato, you know, like, and you know everything there is like very cheap. So like when you go there, you feel like you're rich. You know, you get a whole like bowl of ice cream. It's only cost you like $1 or $2. If you come here, it's like $10, $15 just for like all that ice cream. Yeah.
What was it like traveling around and interacting with people? What was the mood like? Did you foresee any of this happening?
Mm-hmm.
For like the when so like everyone was they had it was like a little like tension built up in like the city, like oh everyone's getting kind of worried, but I think it was everyone was just really shocked with how quick this happened. It was especially because like days before the Taliban even took over, they were expecting like at least 1 to 3 more months left where they had time to like evacuate people and stuff like that, but like it all happened so quickly in 1 or 2 nights. Taliban took complete control of the main city, Kabul, and yeah, it's crazy to think how quickly it fell.
Did you go there visiting family?
Yeah, we went to visit family, and like my dad wanted us to like visit our homeland because like um so once we found out that the Americans were gonna leave Afghanistan, my dad was like, we should probably take like another chance. Like this could probably be our last chance to actually visit, because who knows what's gonna happen the next year, next 2 years, how long we're not gonna be able to visit again. So we took this chance to actually come and like visit, and yeah, and we had a good experience so far.
What, like I said, what was it like to just talk to the local people? Was there any
Mhm.
tension in the air at that time? Was there any fear when you guys were walking? Was it easy to walk around? Did you feel safe?
Yeah, I would walk around. I would go around with my cousins, go to the main city, go shopping. We would go like get food. Just walk around, like Shadow now. It's like it was next to our that's where like my cousins and everyone live. So we would just go like explore the city. At night it was pretty like busy too. Probably until like 11, 12 o'clock when it would die down and the dogs took over the city. So but yeah, but there was tension too. Like the thing was, people didn't really expect the Taliban to come to Kabul. Like everyone, even myself, I was like, no way, all the governments are here, the embassies are here, all the foreign people. You'd see like British people, like for example, like just driving around, or like you'd just see like yeah, a lot of people they had fear of the Taliban, but like they didn't expect them to come to the main city.
So there's a lot of like, are you still in touch with your cousins right now? What's the feeling there now?
So it's like mixed feelings. Like it's obviously that like the Americans are still there, so like they're not really like once like or like more likely to see what's going to happen in the next week or two, because there's no official government yet. There's still chaos at the airport. There's evacuation still happening, but they're saying like it's not too like bad. Like it's um the Taliban's kind of like they feel like the city's vibe is kind of the same, but they're not too sure yet, because once Americans leave and all the foreign troops leave, that's when they'll actually establish a government, and that's when we will actually see what's Afghanistan's going to be like.
Are you go ahead?
When you were in Afghanistan, I'm curious because I never really got to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, now that you're talking about it,
Yeah.
did you feel like people lived in fear, or did you feel like people were just living their day-to-day life and they were okay? How were they
People
mental?
would, yeah, people were just living their day life. Even when I would ask people like, "Oh, what do you think of if the Taliban takes over Afghanistan again?" They're like, "We've been in this country for many years. We've experienced the Soviets taking over. We experienced the Taliban taking over, and then we've seen even that Americans coming back after the 9/11 attacks. They're people who just live in. They adapt to their living conditions. Like they at this point they kind of adjusted to like living different like governments, different wars. That they're like, I mean, at this point, like what can you do? Just you just gotta adapt."
Good to know.
Because, go ahead.
For me, being in America, you would hear all about the bombings and things like that. So I was always curious about, were people just afraid to kind of go places because of the bombing? But it's so great to hear that people were living their life.
Yeah, people are completely living their lives. I mean, like even the city itself is super big. It's whatever. It's like 6-7 million people in that one city. I'm not exactly sure the exact number, but the city is big, and like stuff would happen in one city, like, and you wouldn't even hear about it days after. Like people are just living their life. They're going through the day, like going to school, going to their work. And a lot of times, like people would send me stuff from America that I wouldn't even hear about was happening in Kabul itself. So we're just having fun. We're just going around. Yeah.
It just reminds me of when I lived in LA, and you would hear about things happening in South Central or Compton
Yeah.
or just Los Angeles, crime, shootings. And then you're like, it doesn't really affect. I mean, that's how we reacted when we were living there. I mean, I'm sure it's that way in the Bay Area, and here in Phoenix, we can hear people saying that, there's shootings or what happened. And that's how they are over there. They're like, yeah, it happened, but it didn't happen here. So we're okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my dad would tell us too. Like, if you go to Chicago, for example, you would hear mass shootings go, like, shootings and gangs happening on the other side of the city, and then you're at the other side of the city. It kind of really just depends. Like, every city has its own, has its own crime, has its own, I guess, criminal activities going on. So every city, it's not like it's perfect, like every city has its own negatives to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what are you glad that you ended up experiencing and had a chance to actually go to Afghanistan for this time?
I was glad to actually, it's crazy to always hear about, everyone's always super scared of going there. I'm glad, I actually got to visit a country that everyone's super, like, oh my God, you actually went there? I'm like, yeah, I actually did go there, and it's also like visiting my family there. I haven't seen them in my whole life. It's the first time I actually see them in person. That's not like WhatsApp or actually interacting them because face to face is way different than just texting and stuff like that. So also just exploring our own country, Afghanistan, being able to explore our culture and just the country itself was just really nice.
What was it like for your brothers to experience the country, like the younger ones? Like, what was it like for them?
Oh, they really liked it. Sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, can we come here more often? Can we, like Yasin, the little one, he'd be like, "Oh, let's just move here sometime." We had a lot of fun. Yeah. It was because we also had little. My cousin had they had kids too, or their ages and stuff like that. So yeah.
Did you just stay in Kabul, or did you go other places as well?
We were just mostly in Kabul, because the situation was bad, outside the city, and so we didn't really go outside. But we did the farthest we went was to Pahman, which is probably maybe an hour north, but that's really it.
One thing that I know when we went, there was so much guilt we went purposely not wearing nice clothes. We went with a lot of money to just hand over to everybody. We went with a bunch of this is after 2001, so we went in 2003, and at that time kids were just going back to school, so we went wanting to give them as much as we could. We went with suitcases filled to just donate everything.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of guilt. Like literally, if somebody looked at my shirt and said they liked it, I wanted to give it to them. Like that's how it felt.
Yeah,
how was it this time with you when you went?
The thing that I think the most surprising thing to me was when I was in Kabul was the amount of rich people there. There were so many rich people. Like everywhere you'd go, you'd just see Land Cruiser. I'm saying 2021, the brand newest model of Land Cruisers, bulletproof. Everyone had guards. Then you walk around the city, you would see nice houses. That's what I found most interesting was actually just the amount of rich people I actually saw there, and yeah, every corner you would see in another you could just tell by the wealth in their cars. Having the newest model of the Land Cruiser plus fully armored, bulletproof and everything. You can just tell that's with U.S. money too. So U.S. dollars for them, it's the currency is a lot less there. So and also when comparing so I haven't been there. This is the first time I've been there, but my dad who's been there I think 3 or 4 times. He's been there 2006, 2009, 2015. And he's saying that the city was a lot better now. There's even when I went there, I was surprised of how nice it looked. He said almost so much reconstruction going on. They're building new bridges. They're building a lot of I guess more touristy type stuff. For example, when I was I don't know if you know. So by my grandfather's house, that big mountain next to it, where they had the bomb shelter, the military base. No, I don't know. It's I forgot the name of it, but they were rebuilding. It was under construction. There's a construction workers trying to rebuild stuff like that to make it look nicer, and for visitors. So people will come and visit. So which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of reconstruction going on.
when we went there, I think one of the reasons I was just broke down crying is there's so much destruction. And the
Oh, really?
airport, when you're landing, there was a lot of broken planes, broken tanks, broken, like so much there's so much destruction. And then when we drove around Kabul, there was bombed out buildings. I went
Oh,
back
wow.
to my school and Herat, and there was bullet holes in the walls. There was bullet holes in our house in Herat. And so all of that was really difficult to watch. But like I said, that was after, right after the 9/11, 2003. So since then, there's malls there, there's grocery
Yeah, yeah.
stores, there's like
It's really
huge
nice.
wedding halls. It's just like a different
Hmm.
place now.
Exactly. There's so many like there's a lot of malls. There's like 10-story mall. You'd see like big hotels like you would be in like Dubai, you know, like those like 10, 15
Wow.
story hotels. And like just all around you just see like a lot of there's a lot of high buildings being made right now. So there's like if you go around the city, like just around you know, like my grandfather's like house slash hotel, right? There's like three or four right probably in a mile radius, like six, seven like
Are you
10,
talking
15
about the
story.
Continental Hotel?
No, my grandfather's
Oh,
my
his house was
grandfather's
Continental
yeah.
Hotel? Oh,
Yeah, the hotel they made just around that 1 mile radius, like they probably have like there's six, seven people who are building like apartment complexes or like hotels and stuff like that, which is yeah, it's really interesting to see like there's so much like you know construction going on and like rebuilds and you know, most of the stuff like I didn't really notice any like war like in Kabul itself, but because I'm pretty sure at that point they just rebuilt everything, so yeah, it was nice.
so what do you think is going to happen with all of that now? All that construction, all that development?
I feel like if that they're just gonna continue. I mean, if the Taliban is just like, I know, like, I mean, still, no one really knows how they're saying they're like they're more modernized, that they're more like better than they were before, right? So, I mean, the real test is we're gonna see once the foreign troops pull out and they have the city to themselves. I don't think they're just gonna destroy buildings. I mean, there's no war going on currently. It's just now that America's out with the Taliban, it's just the Taliban itself. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think it will just continue development, but it's just gonna be like in a different I don't know, like a different like point. So it's yeah, it's gonna be interesting if we see how it's gonna be like in the next year.
I mean, that's the biggest fear, is that all that progress just halting and
Hmm.
stopping.
Yeah, but gladly there was no like battles or war then like then the city itself when the Taliban take over like the president left. So you know there was no like war or anything like inside the city because that could have been really disastrous. Yeah.
Or is your family planning on staying there?
They tried to like so yeah. I mean, they tried to go to the airport because they have like I guess they have like kind of work with the U.S., but just getting to the airport itself is a whole war zone right there. Like you're getting yourself there's thousands of people, you know, like helpless people, like who just want to get on an airplane, but like and you just saw like just yesterday they had there was two suicide bombs over there, and just like going to the airport itself is a big like it's a big like risk. So and like they actually did try to go to the airport. I think it was a couple of days ago. They tried to go, but it was bad. They said like you can't get past the crowd. There's people firing in the air to like break the crowd. People running away. There's stampedes going on. There's can you imagine just like thousands of people just in one area? You know, there's a lot of robbery. There's probably like a lot of like danger, especially going with your family. Like if you have like your dad, he's probably very old, or if you have your wife, your kids, you had kids and stuff like that. It's just impossible. I heard to try to leave in that situation because it's too chaotic in that area. Yeah.
How does it feel for you to watch all this unfold?
I was gonna ask the same question.
Oh yeah, it's definitely especially like the first few days when the Taliban take over, you saw like everyone just rushing to the airport and like on the field. I think it was like yeah, I was like I was really there like last month, like not last even like a couple weeks ago. Just just seeing like I know like you know just how I said before, like just seeing like all the familiar places I recognize, you know, and like just like I was you know it's crazy how I was just there like 2 or 3 weeks ago because like I have like before like pictures and now you can just see after pictures of like all the chaos there.
How are you feeling
Yeah.
about it?
I'm feeling like I'm not like I'm like I don't really know what's like it seems her like it's just crazy to think about how all this happened so quickly. Also, like, uh, it's like, mixed emotion. You don't really know what's gonna happen the next. It's kind of like
Mhm.
really up to God to see how it's gonna happen the next like week, the next month, the next year, and see what really happens to the country.
Mhm. We're still in a state of shock, I feel like.
Yeah, everyone just shocked.
Processing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Just
quickly it all
watching it
happened.
all. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of when we went in 2003 and my parents were like, well, this is the movie theater we all used to go to. And we're like, it's just a pile of rubble right now. And I
Yeah.
wish there was a before and after picture, like, look at how beautiful it was. And now look at it, it's destroyed. For you, it's also going to be like, look at how beautiful it was. It'll be interesting to see what the after will be afterwards, which is sad.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Cause like when I went there, I had those you would see like 3D, 4D movie theaters. You'd see like
Right.
places like well, like Peter Piper Pizza we have here. They had places like that there too. Like it was just really cool to see all that there.
Well, your story and your pictures, and I hope you kept a journal of your trip.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going to be worth everything moving forward for the future generation, for your family, for your brothers, for your kids.
Yeah, of course. I took a lot of pictures there. It sucks to have see all those. Like it was a good memory.
Yeah. The
So,
beauty of it is that you've experienced it, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm
you
glad
can
I experienced it before. Yeah. Yeah, it's because now it's like it's really hard to see what's going to happen in the future. So it's good that I experienced it before it's all happened.
you're so lucky that you went. I'm glad you guys got to go.
Yeah, it was a good trip. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your
Mhm.
story. It's important to have a different side to what's happening now, just a different perspective of this is just a month ago, it was a different world.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anytime. Thank you guys.
All right, thanks, Mobeen.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Bye.
Bye.
Hearing stories like that makes it really hard too.
It does. And I kind of feel a sense of why didn't I go visit,
Mm.
right? Because I had a chance. I could have. And hearing his stories, it's like, wow, sounds great.
But that's what I'm saying about us. It's so different that we're the kind of immigrants that don't have that option, really. I mean, when we go, it's like stolen moments. It's not like I can stay here for a while. I have a patient, she's 85 years old, and she's very connected to her culture. She's Norwegian, but she's never been to Norway. She loves everything about Norway. She loves her family history, and she's never been to Norway. She's 85, and I still want her to still go so that she can say, I went to Norway. It's the same with us. I mean, I don't know how long it'll be before you can actually go in peace, especially as a woman.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the difficult piece. I think that's a hard pill to swallow. I think as a woman, as a person, I've been wished to be able to go, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to go, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to take my daughters, and I'm hopeful that we will arise again somehow. Inshallah.
What about how old are your daughters?
I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Oh, so they really don't have any idea.
They don't have an idea, but when that day we were watching the news, the 5-year-old was very aware of what was happening. All of a sudden, she started singing the Sar Zamin Man, the song that I really truly enjoy listening to, just because just makes me feel so close to being home. She started singing that, and we recently, my husband and I, took our daughters to kindergarten and preschool, and it was a lot. I was so proud that I was able to provide that for my daughters, and I was able to take them. But there are girls their age that are trying to survive, that are trying to leave, that are probably dead, just trying to live a normal life, and that will suffer back home. So my husband and I struggled with that a bit, but I did take a lot of pictures, and with every picture, I paid homage to Afghanistan, and I had an Afghanistan flag behind them because that was my way to process what I was feeling that day.
And I think when I took suitcases filled with pens and pencils and notebooks when I went, it was my way of giving to them and respecting and honoring them for doing everything, risking their lives just to get an education, doing it in secret, hiding the fact that they're learning and studying. that is like the first word in the Quran is to read and to study and to learn. That is an obligation for every Muslim man and woman. It should not be limited to just men. And that's what's really heartbreaking, that all of us have these opportunities, but a certain few are limited and they can't. And we got to figure out how to help those women and make sure that they're getting their right to study and to learn.
Absolutely. And I think that guilt piece also falls in that too, right? We made it, we became educated, we're able to provide for our daughters, we're able to have the generations that can get educated. But what about our homes that are the women that back home, or the children, the girls back home?
When I was working in the schools, it was in 2001, I was working in the Bay Area and the Fremont area. I don't think I was working for the Fremont School District at that time, but I was working in a middle school, and my principal, this is before September 11th, my principal wanted me to start an Afghan club because there were so many Afghans that really didn't have anybody to guide them. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll start the Afghan club. And then September 11th happened, and it was just so difficult to go through that. And he felt the need to protect me when that happened, because we were sitting there trying to get people to sign up for the Afghan club. And then the whole September 11th thing happened. And he's just like, I want to make sure nobody's going to hurt you. Nobody's going to say anything to you. Nobody's going to be mean to you because you're Afghan, because there's a lot of rage at that time. But at the same time, moving forward past all that, as I was starting to hear about what the Afghan kids were going through, and I would get so angry with these kids that weren't studying, that weren't taking advantage of the education. Like, you guys have been provided this opportunity to study and to learn for free, and you're choosing to talk back to your teacher and be defiant and not take advantage. And that's what was confusing for me. It's like, I grew up with education being so important to me. Why is it important to them? And when I dug deeper, it went back to the trauma. They didn't have the attention span because they were still in survival mode. They didn't have parents that were able to be parents for them because they were dealing with their own trauma. So as school officials, it's really important to keep that in mind, that sometimes the kids are going to act out and are going to not be focused on their education, not because they're not capable or don't want to, but because they are probably in a traumatic state and they're functioning the best they can, and to focus on what is their need instead of just focusing on the grades.
And for the Afghan children, they're kind of getting a sense of how things run here. So it'll take time. It won't be, it'll take time, but they're more than capable of being able to kind of live in the society in a way that, we all do. So,
I mean, coming here at the age of 9, when I was in Afghanistan, I was very ambitious, very motivated, did very well in school, very outspoken. I would even say I had some leadership qualities. The minute I came here, I just became debilitatingly shy. I couldn't express myself in the classroom. I was extremely afraid of everything. There was a lot of negative attention on us because we looked different, we spoke a different language, we didn't know the rules. And so all of that contributed to a lot of anxiety for me. And I talk about that openly. And I wish I knew that it was related to all of it. I didn't make that connection until I was an adult. So making sure to pay attention to that, because although they're in a much better state than I am, because they're used to the Western, they were exposed to the Western lifestyle. A lot of them have some English abilities. They have watched enough movies to know. When we came, we didn't have movies in Afghanistan. We didn't have a TV. We had no exposure to America. We weren't even planning to come to America. So all of that was a shock to my system, and it took me many, many years to overcome that. So just keep in mind all of that, because I know not everybody's coming to America. They're going to Colombia, they're going to Mexico, they're going to Canada, they're going to all these countries that are going to be completely foreign cultures for them from their own culture. So be mindful and be understanding of their plight.
And the ones that I do know, the agencies that I've actually worked with or that I've been in contact with, they've already prepared. They're preparing mental health services. They're preparing a lot of the basic needs that these families will need. So people are preparing. I'm hopeful that we can welcome them. I'm hopeful that we can be compassionate to their mental health needs. What they've gone through has been something that I don't think we can even imagine. So I think as long as we have the heart, we'll be able to help them.
maybe we'll be more prepared this time than they were when we came.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure this conversation can go on, and it needs to continue as far as we can continue the conversation in the comments. But I want to thank you for the time. I want to thank Mobeen for joining us, and thank everybody that's commented and participated in the discussion. Thank you for being here, and please continue to send your prayers to the people. Pray for peace around in Afghanistan and around the world, and stability for everyone. And just thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we're going to end this. Thank you, everyone, for being here.